Okay, so let's dive into this. Imagine you get your hands on these documents, right? Transcripts. And they look like language, sort of, but they act more like, I don't know, abstract art, maybe?
Yeah, that's a really good way to put it, actually. They're full of sounds that just, repeat and get tangled up, words twisting into knots.
Exactly. Phrases that seem designed not just to communicate, but to, like, actively fight your mouth.
Uh-huh. It feels intentional.
And this is what we got when we looked at these transcripts from a series of YouTube videos by the Doza crew.
Yeah, that's absolutely the feeling they give you. Reading through them, I mean, the titles alone, API, Vertipatha, Zungentrummer, Fluid Alternatarium, it's immediately clear this isn't, standard conversation. Not at all.
No way.
This is language being pushed to an extreme. It feels performative, challenging.
Almost aggressive
Yeah.
in how it tests your ability to just speak clearly.
Yes. Aggressive is a good word for it. How it tests your articulation.
Right. You see these lines hitting the same sound again and again, or these really complex consonant combinations, structures that just loop back on themselves. It forces you to, well, either slow right down or you trip up, or you have to really concentrate.
And the sources themselves, they basically tell us what's going on. They use terms like Zungenbrecher explicitly.
Yeah, tongue breaker.
Tongue breaker. That's the direct translation. It's the German term for what we call a tongue twister.
Okay, got it. Tongue breaker. Makes
Yeah.
sense. And there was another phrase, too, something like schnell sprecht.
Mm-hmm. Suggesting, speech saying or something along those lines. So it confirms these aren't just random lists of words. They're deliberate, constructed to be spoken rapidly and to be difficult.
Right. So our mission then for this deep dive is to take this really unique collection of German phrases, these tongue breakers, and really explore them using the source material itself as our guide. We need to figure out, what exactly they are, dissect what makes them so incredibly hard to say.
And crucially, understand what these transcripts themselves tell us about the act of speaking them. What kind of skill or effort or even what kind of mindset is needed to actually master these things.
Because, like you said, the sources don't just give us the phrases, they offer this really fascinating perspective. Language as a tool, language as a canvas, even language as a kind of battleground.
Exactly. It's like a window into this whole world of linguistic artistry and maybe even competition.
And honestly, just looking at some of these, it makes my tongue feel tired already, just reading them.
Oh, tell me about it. You and me both.
Yeah.
Ready to try and navigate this labyrinth they talk about.
Let's give it a shot. So you mentioned the sources aren't just lists. There's this commentary, this kind of philosophy running underneath it all about manipulating words, about speaking.
Yes.
And that's where we really start to see the intention, right, behind these challenges.
Yeah, absolutely. And it immediately elevates this beyond just a simple, parlor game. It's something much more deliberate. There's one phrase that really stands out. Wir drehen Wörter, bis sie brechen im Labyrinth der Sprache.
Which means?
Twist words until they break in the labyrinth of language.
Wow. Okay. Twist words until they break.
I mean, it's not just rearranging words, is it? It suggests you can actually take language, twist it, push its boundaries, almost to a breaking point.
Breaking words. That's such a powerful image, almost violent in a way.
It is.
It implies language isn't this fragile thing you have to handle carefully, but something you can really manipulate, push hard. And this twisting happens within a labyrinth der Sprache, the labyrinth of language, which suggests language itself is this complex, maybe confusing system, and you need real skill to navigate it. It feels like they see themselves as explorers, charting the really difficult corners of that labyrinth.
Absolutely. And then the sources explicitly frame this whole manipulation thing as art. We see the phrase ein Künstler mit der Sprache als Leinwand.
An artist with language as their canvas.
Exactly. So it takes it right out of the realm of just basic communication and puts it squarely into creative expression, where the medium is actually sound and structure and rhythm.
And like any art form, especially one that involves, physical performance, it needs incredible skill, precision. The transcripts are packed with lines that demand technical mastery, things like pack das mich scharf.
Pack the mic sharp or tightly.
Right, or schlag die mit Akkuratesse.
Smash them with accuracy.
Schlag jede Silbe mit Präzision.
Hit every syllable with precision.
Scharfer Zungenschlag, meine Mission.
Sharp tongue strike, my mission. Yeah.
And Meister der Wortwähre.
Master of word twisting.
It's so clear. This isn't just casual talking. It's presented as this high-skill endeavor, almost like a martial art for your mouth.
It really is. It's all about intentionality control. There's another bit. Acrobatic, my Wortfluss, is Kunstwerk.
Acrobatics. My word flow is artwork.
Right. It directly compares that linguistic agility to physical acrobatics. It reinforces the idea that this fluent, complex word flow isn't just natural, it's a practiced skill, a performance art needing flexibility and control.
So you don't just speak these things.
No, you perform them. You perform these linguistic feats.
And that performance angle brings us to a phrase that really jumped out at me. It suggests there's maybe more at stake than just getting it right yourself. Ein Ringen, die Kroon der Vers.
Ah, yes. A struggle or a wrestling match for the crown of verses.
A wrestling match for the crown of verses. That sounds like, well, competition, right?
It does. It strongly suggests that mastering these challenges isn't just about personal skill. It's a kind of striving for supremacy, a contest within this specific domain of language manipulation.
So who can pull off these acrobatics the best?
Exactly. Who can break the words, navigate that labyrinth with the most precision, the most flair maybe? It adds this layer of competitive drive. It's not just doing it, it's doing it better.
And to win that struggle, that crown, precision in rhythm and timing is key. They mentioned, Tictus takt versmas wie ein Uhrwerk.
It ticks, cack, verse measure, like a clockwork. Like a clockwork mechanism.
Yeah. So it suggests this mechanical, almost metronomic precision is absolutely necessary to deliver these complex sequences without messing up.
Each syllable has its place, its exact timing, like gears in a clock.
Get the timing off just a fraction.
And the whole thing grinds to a halt. You stumble, you break the flow.
And the ultimate consequence of failing, of lacking that precision, as one of the source captions puts it.
Zungenschrummer.
Tongue destroyer or tongue wrecker.
Exactly. It's like a warning label on the box.
Handle with care.
Right. These aren't just tricky little phrases. They're presented as potentially devastating if you can't speak them correctly. They can literally feel like they are wrecking your tongue if you don't have the control, the speed, the precision.
It really reinforces the idea that this is a serious test of linguistic skill.
So, yeah, before we even dive into the specific phrases themselves, the sources paint this incredible picture. German tongue twisters, at least in this context, aren't just silly kids' games.
Not at all.
They're seen as challenges, a form of linguistic art, linguistic performance, requiring intense skill, precision, rhythm.
And representing this kind of competitive striving, a struggle for mastery where, failure results in linguistic breakdown, the Zoomentrümmer.
It completely reframes how you might normally think about simple wordplay.
It really does. It sets the stage perfectly for understanding the intensity, the difficulty of the examples we're about to look at. It's not just what's being said.
It's the act of saying it, under pressure, with skill.
All right. So if that's the philosophy, the art, the struggle, the precision, the potential wrecking, let's look at the tools of the trade, the actual Zungenbreaker. What makes these specific German phrases the raw material for this kind of linguistic acrobatics and struggle?
Well, the core techniques usually involve manipulating sound and structure in very specific ways. And one of those common methods, you see it all over these sources, is alliteration combined with really challenging consonant clusters.
And in German, yes, certain sounds are just classic culprits for tripping you up, like that infamous Zdeo sound. It comes up everywhere in these transcripts. The classic example, right? Zwischen zwei Zwetschgen, Zweigen, zwischen zwei zwischende Schwalben.
Between two plum branches, chirp two twittering swallows.
Saying that quickly. Zwischen zwei Zwetschgen, Zweigen, zwischen zwei zwischende Schwalben. It forces your tongue into this really rapid, complex movement.
Yeah, that C sound, then the V sound.
Right, that TSV cluster, doing it over and over, switching between sounds like TSV, TSV. It's incredibly demanding. On the muscles right at the front and middle of your tongue, it just feels like yeah, see? It just ties itself up. It's a total tongue knot.
That specific W cluster is definitely prime territory for tongue tying. And the sources give us another one, too. 10 Zement zum Zahnarzt zum Zementieren.
10 goats pull cement to the dentist for cementing.
Okay. 10 Ziegen ziehen Zement zum Zahnarzt zum Zementieren. Again, that relentless Z sound, the T sound, often followed by I or other consonants. It forces that rapid, almost buzzing articulation right at the front of your mouth.
So it's not just zoo, but Z in general when it's clustered like that.
Seems like it, yeah.
Then you've got the sh and S sounds, often mixed up with hard G or sick sounds, which makes it even worse, like sieben Schwaben schwimmen, über 7 Schwimmbecken.
7 Swabians swim over 7 swimming pools.
7 Schwaben schwimmen über 7 Schwimmbecken. You start with S, then schw, then sh, then schwu again. These sounds are made with slightly different tongue shapes, different airflow.
Right. S is that narrow channel. Sh is wider, further back. Shui adds the lip rounding.
And switching rapidly between those subtle positions, it's extremely tricky. It's like constant high-speed fine-tuning of your tongue shape.
And how about in dicken Fichten, dicke Fiften?
In the dense spruce thicket, nod thick spruces. Lovely image.
In dichten Fichten, nicken, dicke Fichten. This one throws chi, that sort of back of the throat sound in licht, and kick, the hard keys stop at you, mixed with T and D.
So you're hitting the back of your mouth for chi and seek, then the front for T and D.
Exactly. Rapidly alternating between the front and back like that, while also managing the difference between stops like K, T, D, and fricatives like C, the C sound here. It's exhausting.
And as the sources show, Dichten, Fichten, Dickift is a real classic for a reason. It keeps showing up.
We also saw sieben Schneeskieber Schippen, 7 Schnee.
7 snow skiers shovel 7 shovels of snow.
7 Schneeskieber Schippen, 7 Spippen Schnee. More sh, definitely. But mixed with C and sh. That SPE cluster in Schneeskieber needs careful coordination, SP, before you even hit the vowel.
And then you repeat the sh sound, but with different endings. Schippen, Schnee. It feels like a sprint relay for your mouth parts, your articulators.
It does. And another challenge. Tschechischer Regisseur schätzen schöne chinesische Schüsselchen.
Czech directors appreciate beautiful Chinese bowls. Okay.
Tschechischer Regisseur schätzen schöne chinesische Schüsselchen. This one brings in the chet sound. It's an affricate, like chick in church. It combines a T stop and an fricative.
So it's technically one sound, but it requires that sequence of movements stop, then release into the friction sound.
Right, and mixing chesh and C from Shetson. With all the different vowels and endings, it's a real test of precision. Demands complex motor planning for every single syllable.
Okay, moving to another pattern we saw a lot. The B sounds, especially linked with L or R, like Brautkleid bleibt Brautkleid.
A wedding dress remains wedding dress. Simple idea.
Simple idea, yeah, but saying it fast. Broadkleid bleibt Broadkleid. The B stop needs that full lip closure, then a quick release. The B adds the L sound right after the B.
Doing that quickly, especially alternating like Brautkleid and Blight, it's deceptively hard. Your lips have to work fast.
And the sources feature this one heavily, including the variation Braut und Blaukraut bleibt Blaukraut.
Bride and blue cabbage remains blue cabbage. Makes perfect sense.
Of course. Braut and Blaukraut bleibt Blaukraut. Same BL challenge, different words. These feel kind of foundational, don't they? Like basic training drills in this whole linguistic competition thing.
They absolutely are. They target those specific lip movements, closure, release very directly. But then, as you noticed, the sources give us the extreme version, the boss level B challenge.
Oh yeah, that monster. Bernd Bolts bürgerlicher Brauhausbesitzer bei Bronner berühmte bayerische Bierhemner beginnt wiederum brav Bierbrauer bürgerlichen breiten beständig bitteres braunes bayerisches Bier.
Takes a deep breath.
Just reading it is tiring. Bernd Bolts bürgerlicher Brauhausbesitzer. It's an onslaught, a percussive assault of Bs.
It is.
Almost every word starts with that bilabial stop. It needs incredibly fast, repeated lip closures and releases. It feels less like normal speech and more like, I don't know, rhythmic popping sounds.
Yeah, it absolutely is. It tests the endurance and the speed of those specific articulatory muscles right to their absolute limit. It's a perfect example of that Zungenschrummer idea designed to wreck your tongue through sheer repetition of one really challenging articulation.
And F and R also get their moment. Fix, fish, frisch, frische, fische, fish, frische Spritze.
Quick fish, fresh fish.
It's
Fish is fresh, fish, frische Spritze. The meaning gets a bit lost.
Yeah, the meaning's secondary here. Fix, fische, fische, fresh, fische, Spritze. It's simple alliteration with F and R. That F sound, top teeth on bottom lip and fit, adds the R trill or tap right after.
Rapidly switching between just F and R is hard enough, especially when you mix in shish, frische, and Spritzhaus. It targets those lip teeth and tongue tip movements.
And the sources bring this one up multiple times, so it's clearly effective.
Moving on to the K sounds, often mixed with L, N, or T. Glitze kleine kunterbindge Kleider.
Glittery little colorful clothes, something like that.
Yeah. Glitze kleine kunterbindge Kleider. That velar stop K, back of the tongue hitting the soft palate, mixed with gul, the stop plus the ku to kill.
Yeah.
You're basically jumping between the back, front, and middle of your mouth with rapid stops and releases all over the place.
Or those variations on the glitzekleine Kinder theme. Like glitzekleine Kinder können keinen Kirschstoff knacken.
Glittery little children cannot crack cherry juice. Makes sense.
Glitzekleine Kinder können keinen Kirschstoff knacken.
It feels like your tongue is trying to do several things at once. Lift the back for the K, touch the ridge for the N or L, all while coordinating the vowel sound. It's tricky.
And the one that always gets a reaction, glitzekleine Katzen kotzen, glitzekleine Katzen.
Glittery little cats vomit, glittery little vomit.
Charming.
And it's reverse. Glitzekleine Katzen, glitzekleine Katzen.
Lovely.
This combines that hard K stop with the City affricate like the T sound in cats.
Right, Kotz involves a stop, then a friction sound, right at the alveolar ridge, the bit behind your teeth.
So you're constantly bouncing between the back of the mouth for K and the front for Ets. It's this percussive, bouncy sound sequence that's really hard to smooth out when you say it fast.
And yeah, the slight absurdity of cats vomiting glitter probably adds to its memorability, and its recurrence in the sources definitely means it's considered a key challenge in this arena.
Then there was Klaus Knopf liebt nodelose KN, nulekleise Küpse lieb Geküssknopf.
Klaus Knopp loves dumplings. The meaning gets obscure again.
Yeah, it trails off a bit, but Klaus Knopf liebt nodelose KN Nudelkleise. It's another K and K festival. It feels like a deliberate attempt to make you trip by constantly switching between that back of the mouth K stop and the front of the mouth sounds that follow it in clusters like KN and KN.
It absolutely is a focused attack on that specific transition. And then for just sheer volume of one consonant sound, that M section was pretty intense. Montags macht mir meine muntere Mutter, mittags meistens muss Mama mag morgens meistens Milch mit Marmelade mampfen.
Mondays, my cheerful mother mostly makes mush for me at midday. Mom usually likes to munch milk with marmalade in the morning. Something very domestic and M-heavy.
Montags macht mir meine muntere Mutter. Oh, that needs such rapid, precise lip closure for the M sound, which is a nasal consonant, right? So you have to engage and disengage your nasal airflow while rapidly closing and opening your lips over and over. It's a totally different kind of challenge than the stocks or fricatives, but just as effective at tying you up.
It really is. It shows how even seemingly simple sounds like M can be, well, weaponized in a tongue twister just through sheer repetition.
Okay, so we've seen how alliteration and these tricky consonant clusters are really the backbone for a lot of these Zungenbrecher. But the sources also show that the challenge isn't always just phonetic. Sometimes it comes from the structure of the phrase, or maybe it's slightly confusing logic.
Absolutely. The recursive phrases are a perfect example of that kind of structural difficulty. The most famous one in German, and it appears across these sources, is wenn fliegen hin, hinterfliegen, fliegen, 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 fliegen nach.
Oh, yeah. My brain hurts just hearing it. Wenn fliegen into fliegen, 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 fliegen nach. Fliegen gets used again and again. It means both the noun flies and the verb to fly.
Right. So the sentence structure loops back on itself, refers back to itself.
When flies behind fly... Wait. When flies fly behind flies, flies fly after flies, is that it?
Something like that. The ambiguity and the repetition force you to parse the grammar while you're speaking, while your tongue is trying to just keep up with the repeated sound.
It's a cognitive challenge layered right on top of the phonetic one, designed to make you hesitate, stumble, as you try to figure out who or what is flying where.
It perfectly embodies that idea they mentioned earlier, navigating the labyrinth of language. It's a structural trap. Another example uses long compound words with internal repetition or rhyme.
Wer gegen Aluminium immun ist, besitzt Aluminium Minimal-Immunität.
Whoever is immune against aluminum possesses aluminum minimal immunity. Wer gegen Aluminium immun ist, besitzt Aluminium minimal Immunität. The words aluminium immunitate, they're repeated or used in slight variations. The sheer length of aluminium, plus the internal rhymes and sound repetitions, it makes it really easy to swap syllables or just miss parts.
Requires careful sequencing and memory of the structure, and you said this one appears in multiple sources too.
Yes, it does. Shows its effectiveness as a twister.
Then you have the comparative structures. They seem simple on the surface, but that comparison forces you to be extremely precise with your articulation to make the point clear. Like, die Bürsten mit den schwarzen Borsten bürsten besser als die Bürsten mit den weißen Borsten bürsten.
The brushes with the black bristles brush better than the brushes with the white bristles brush.
Die Bürste mit den schwarzen Borstenbürsten besser als die Bürsten mit den weißen Borstenbürsten. You have to hit those Bürsten, Bürsten, bristles sounds really clearly twice, and the contrast schwarzen versus weißen highlights any slip-up immediately.
And the alliteration with B and the TS sounds adds to the phonetic difficulty, but yeah, the structure itself compounds it.
Exactly. And there was another one like that. Kleine Nussnacker, knacking, großen Nussnacker.
Little nutcrackers crack crackingly. Crunchy or crack big nutcrackers, or something to that effect, comparing how they crack.
Kleine Nussnacker, knacking, großen Nussnacker. Again, it's a comparison, using nacken to crack and its variations.
You're comparing the way small and large nutcrackers crack things. The repetition of nacken in that ken cluster makes it phonetically hard, but the comparative structure demands you clearly differentiate the two halves.
And you mentioned the Burstum example also shows up across several transcripts.
Yes, that's another recurring one. Solidifies its place as a key challenge.
The palindromic logic ones, or reversible logic, those are fascinating. The structure is like a verbal mirror. Eine Diplom-Bibliothekarin ist Bibliothekarin mit Diplom. Eine Bibliothekarin mit Diplom ist eine Diplom-Bibliothekarin.
A diploma librarian is a librarian with a diploma. A librarian with a diploma is a diploma librarian.
Eine Diplom-Bibliothekarin ist Bibliothekarin mit Diplom. It's the same idea phrased forward and backward, using slight variations. It's not super complex phonetically, not like the W ones.
No, but the cognitive load of processing that and delivering that looping structure smoothly without getting tangled, that's significant.
Feels like performing a linguistic magic trick. And this exact phrase is another recurring one, apparently, a known test of verbal dexterity.
It definitely tests your ability to maintain sequence and structure under pressure. Then we saw phrases that tell little stories or follow a simple cause and effect logic, but they use repetition or tricky sounds to make the challenge, like wenn der Ben bremst, brennt das Bremslicht.
When Ben brakes, the brake light burns. Simple cause and effect.
Simple logic, yes. But saying Bremslicht quickly, that cluster hits you with brum, bin, brimbill. It's a really tight sequence of sounds involving lips, tongue tip, airflow. It needs to be executed fast and clear.
Or, as Anna a Ben's ass, as Anna a Ben's ananas.
When Anna ate in the evening, Anna ate pineapple in the evening.
A tiny narrative. Als Anna a Ben's ass, as Anna ans ananas. It relies on simple common words. Anna a Ben's evening ass ate, ananas, pineapple. But repeating them rapidly makes them just sort of merge together, causes slips.
And both the Anna one and Ben Bremst are found in multiple sources. Seems like they're go-to tongue breakers.
And the sources even had slightly more elaborate or just plain absurd narratives built on repetition, like the Dackel one.
Oh yes, the Dachsensaga. Wenn Dackel zu mein Dackel noch mein Dackel sagt, kriegt ein Dackel von mein Dackel so eine Dackel, dass dein Dackel nicht mehr Dackel sagen kann.
If your dachshund says dachshund to my dachshund again, your dachshund will get such a smack from my dachshund that your dachshund can't say dachshund anymore. Pure repetitive nonsense.
Exactly. The humor is just in the ridiculous escalation, but the challenge is simply hitting the word Dackel clearly, over and over and over in different grammatical roles without it just turning into mush.
And this Dackel example is another popular one found repeatedly in the sources. The sources even threw in a longer kind of macabre narrative challenge, the Herr und Frau Lück one.
Herr und Frau Lück. Über eine Brücke, da kann eine Mücklücke ins Neben Herr Lück seiner Krücke und schlug Frau Lück, deswegen dann Frau Lücke mit der Mücke und der Krücke im Genicke dort umfiel.
Mr. and Mrs. Look over a bridge, then came a gnat. Mr. Look took his crutch and hit Mrs. Look. Therefore, Mrs. Luck, with the gnat and the crutch in the neck, fell down dead.
Cheerful.
Quite the mini-tragedy.
And it's built entirely around rhyming words. Look, muck, gnat, brücke, bridge, krücke, krücke, nape of the neck. The difficulty comes from the length, that specific big sound repeated, and just maintaining the narrative flow while hitting those sounds right in sequence. All with this dark, slightly humorous twist. It really is a performance piece.
It adds that layer of dark comedy right onto the phonetic and structural challenge. And speaking of absurdity through repetition and linguistic play, that Walswerk section was really something else. Oh yeah, the rolling mill monologue.
Reden von Wallwerken und Walzwerken. Das nicht ganz leicht ist zu unterscheiden, ob es sich um Werke oder Walzwerke handelt. Gott sei Dank ist es aber relativ selten, dass ein Walzwerk besucht oder Walzwerk in der Umgebung der Walzwerke erbraucht werden. Wenn allerdings Walzwerk ein Walzwerk baut, handelt das jetzt zufolge um ein Walzwerk. Wenn dieser dann auch noch darin arbeitet, ist es dann ausschließlich ein Walzwerk.
Talking about Walzwerken and Walzwerken, that it's not quite easy to distinguish whether they are leven in the vicinity or Walzweg. Thank God it's relatively rare that a rolling mill visits a rolling mill or rolling mills are needed in the vicinity of rolling mills. However, if a rolling mill builds a rolling mill, according to the latest, it's a rolling mill. If this one then also works in it, then it is apparently a rolling mill worker. Something like that.
Basically, yeah. It's less about phonetic difficulty and more semantic, structural. It takes the word Volksweg, rolling mill, and just repeats it endlessly with slight, confusing variations inside these circular pseudological sentences.
It gets hard because your brain just struggles to find any meaning or follow the logic amidst that relentless, slightly off repetition. It really embodies that twisting words until they break idea, almost breaking the meaning through repetition.
It's like linguistic deconstruction just by repeating the word. And that airy repeating section was similar, playing with abstract concepts.
Right. Das Übrige auszuschließen. Und im Übrigen sind die Ausschlüsse zu erweitern und die Erweiterungen sind ausschließlich zu erübrigen. Erübrigungen werden des Weiteren ausgeschlossene Erweiterungen sind übrige Ausschlüsse werden erweiterte Erübrigungen werden ausgeschlossen, auszuschließende Erwüngungen werden erweitert.
To exclude the remainder, and for the remainder, the conclusions are to be expanded, and the expansions are exclusively to be made redundant spared. Redundancies are furthermore excluded. Excluded expansions are remaining. Remaining exclusions are expanded. Expanded redundancies are excluded. Excludable expansions are expanded. It's dizzying.
Yeah, it's the abstract repetition of erübrigen, to make redundant, to spare, and related ideas like exclusion, expansion, remainder. It feels like a philosophical argument just collapsing under its own verbal weight.
It's challenging because your mind is struggling to keep track of all the nested concepts and negations, while your tongue is just dealing with saying erübrigen and erweitern over and over.
It's a linguistic game, playing with logic and abstraction, not just sound.
Exactly. And we also saw straight-up wordplay, puns. Das Weinfass, das Frau Leber leerte, verheerte ihre Leberwerte.
The wine barrel that Mrs. Liver emptied devastated her liver values.
Right. It relies on Frau Leber, Mrs. Liver, having it named that's also the word for the organ, liver. The pun is that emptying leerte, the barrel ruined, verheerte, her liver values, Leberwert.
The difficulty seems secondary to the cleverness there, but saying Leberlete verheerte the Leberwert quickly presents a bit of a challenge with those repeated L and R sounds. And then the really abstract ones. Playing with the idea of thought itself. Den denke nie. Du denkst denn, wenn du denkst du nicht. Dann denkst du nur, du denkst denn, das Denken der Gedanken ist gedankenloses Denken.
Don't ever think you think. Because when you think, then you don't think, then you only think you think. Because the thinking of thoughts is thoughtless thinking.
Phew. The constant repetition of denken, to think, and Gedanken, thoughts, just makes this incredibly difficult. It's a tongue twister about thinking. It ties your brain and your tongue in a knot at the same time.
The phonetic challenge is there, with the one cluster, but the conceptual repetition feels like the main hurdle. It's a philosophical tongue twister.
Absolutely. And finally, the sources presented examples that are just true mega twisters, combining multiple elements. That Kugelschnitzer phrase, which appears right after the label Zungenbrecher in one source, feels like a final boss.
It does. Kugelschnitzer, die auf 17 Schnitzsitzen sitzen und mit ihren spitzen Schnitzern ritzen in ihr Schnitzel schlitzen. Wobei sie schwitzen, sind 17 schwitzende Schnitzen auf dem schwitzende Spitze mit benutzende Schnitzholzritzen Schnitzer.
Ball carvers who sit on 17 cuts sit and with their sharp carvers carve slits into their carving wood, whereby they sweat are 17 sweating, carving, on the carving seat sitting, sharp carver using carving wood slitting carvers. Okay, that is a workout.
It really is.
It's got numbers, 17. Actions, sitzen, schnitzen, schlitzen, schlitzen, sitting, carving, scratching, slitting, sweating. Object names, Kugelschnitzer, Schnitzholz. And it combines multiple tricky sounds. Schitz, spitz, ritz, schlitz, ritz.
The length is significant, and it uses these nested clauses that just keep building on each other.
It forces you into rapid switching between the sh sound, sis sound, sis sound, various vowels, all while trying to keep track of the sentence structure. It's a full-on sprint through a phonetic and grammatical obstacle course. This really feels like the tongue wrecker.
It absolutely is. It brings everything together. Sound repetition, specific challenging clusters, sheer length, structural complexity. It's a comprehensive test of everything we've talked about. Precision, rhythm, agility.
Mastering that, one must feel like a significant step in that whole struggle for the crown of verses.
Definitely. It requires not just phonetic accuracy, but real linguistic endurance.
These examples, all of them, really drive home what the sources mean by skill and performance. They seem perfectly designed to identify any weakness in articulation, in rhythm, in cognitive processing speed.
Whether it's those rapid-fire bees, the looping Fliegen, the abstract Denken, or that monster Kugelschnitzer, they're like tools for linguistic athletes.
Yeah, they really demonstrate the artistry involved in crafting phrases that are just inherently difficult to say, highlighting very specific challenges within the German language.
So we've sort of dissected the sources, looked at this underlying philosophy of linguistic mastery they present, and broken down some specific Zungenbreaker examples. Stepping back a bit, why should we, the listeners, care about German tongue twisters and this whole Dose crew perspective? What are the broader implications here?
Well, I think one of the most immediate things is you get a deeper understanding of the mechanics of language itself, even beyond German. When you engage with tongue twisters, it forces you to pay really close attention to the physical act of speaking, that incredibly complex, rapid coordination of your tongue, lips, jaw, vocal cords. It highlights the sounds and the transitions between sounds that are inherently difficult, maybe not just in German, but across many languages. And specifically in German, it pinpoints things like those tricky consonant clusters or the precise articulation needed for sounds like chi and all those different es and she sounds.
It really makes you appreciate the sheer athleticism involved in just speaking fluently, something we probably take for granted every single day.
Oh, absolutely. And if you've ever tried learning a new language, you know exactly how hard it can be to master sounds or sequences that just don't exist in your native tongue. These German twisters perfectly illustrate those specific challenges. They show you exactly where the potential pitfalls are in German phonetics.
Exactly. It gives you a really concrete example of the kind of precise muscle memory that language learners need to build up.
Yeah, see?
And while we focus on German here, tongue twisters themselves are this form of linguistic play you find in pretty much every culture, right?
Right.
So these examples give us this unique glimpse into the specific sounds, the specific word structures that are considered playfully challenging within the German language. It's like a particular cultural flavor of this universal human game.
Yeah, it's a fun piece of cultural linguistics.
Yeah.
And as those sources kept emphasizing with words like precision, Meister, acrobatic, mastering articulation is presented as a skill, something you can actually hone, improve. And that feels relevant whether you're aiming for, native-like fluency in a new language, or maybe you just want to speak more clearly and confidently in your own language, perhaps for public speaking or presentations or anything like that.
It reminds you that verbal clarity isn't just automatic. It's something that can be worked on, practiced.
It reinforces that idea that speaking well, especially when the language gets complex or you're under pressure, is a kind of performance, and it requires practice, skill development.
And we saw, too, that these challenges aren't always just about the sound. Many of them had these layers of meaning, often humorous or absurd.
Yeah, the cat that can't meow anymore, the tragic Herrenfraulich.
Right, or those baffling Volkswerk and Erübrigten sections. They add this layer of wit or entertainment that goes beyond just the phonetic workout.
They turn linguistic difficulty into a source of humor, or even a kind of abstract, maybe slightly weird poetry. That Walswerk section, for example, it felt like this playful, almost philosophical exploration of language itself, using repetition to sort of question meaning.
It shows the creative potential in pushing the boundaries of language. Not just for clearer communication, but for artistic effect, for humor, maybe even for introspection. And it all seems to circle back to that really powerful idea the sources presented right at the start. Ein Ringen, die Krone des Vers.
That struggle for the crown of verses. Yeah, this whole concept of a struggle for linguistic mastery, maybe even a competition where precision and speed are paramount. It provides this really fascinating framework for thinking about language skill.
It's not just about, getting by, communicating the basics. It's about striving for excellence, testing your limits.
And perhaps, at least in the world of the Doza crew, competing for recognition in this really unique form of linguistic performance.
It takes the everyday act of speaking and kind of elevates it to something that requires dedication, practice, and can be a source of real satisfaction when you finally nail that impossibly trendy phrase.
It definitely highlights the hidden complexity and also the playful, performative potential within the language we use every single day. Makes you listen a bit differently, maybe.
So yeah, we've taken quite a deep dive into the world of German tongue twisters, all through the lens of these specific Doza crew transcripts. We've explored their really interesting perspective on Language as art, as performance, as a competitive arena.
And we've seen the specific techniques they use to craft these tongue breakers, from those tough phonetic challenges to the structural and logical twists.
It really gives you a new appreciation for the skill involved in navigating complex language smoothly, and the deliberate artistry behind making phrases that are designed to push a speaker right to their limits.
And thinking about that struggle for the crown of verses, that striving for linguistic mastery, it kind of makes you reflect on your own relationship with language, doesn't it? What aspects of communication do you find challenging? Is there maybe a specific sound in a language you're learning that still trips you up every time?
Or perhaps, just for fun, what's the most elaborate or hilarious or just plain impossible phrase you've ever personally tried to say quickly?
Something to keep in mind, maybe, the next time you find yourself getting a little bit tongue-tied?